Hey guys, welcome back to Maelstrom Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we have the results for my GT this past weekend. I'm going to break down for you guys the good, the bad, and ugly of this weekend and let you know kind of in a step-by-step how I thought it went overall. If that sounds good to you guys and you like these sort of tournament breakdowns, please like and subscribe. We do more content from not just GT tournament results of my own, but we'll go over tactics and list reviews of all things Tyranids and other 40k here on the channel. With that being said, let's get into the video. Alright, tournament results. I will preface this right away. I might do a little ranting in this first portion of the game. You guys will see it kind of broken down in the timestamp if you want to skip by that, but we're going to do a little bit of ranting, just a little bit beforehand. So first off, let's look at a standard board that was played on this weekend. So this is one thing that was a big frustration for most of us non-AdMech players. As you can see, the terrain was not great for anything non-AdMech playing. You had two big pieces of obscuring terrain in the middle, but you were never able to hug them in order to really have any line of sight blocking. You then had four little pieces. I'm talking little. These were, you could hide maybe an exocrine out of line of sight, but not from all angles all the time. So you had four pieces of line of sight blocking in the corners. You had two forests, one on opposite ends. Those were okay. And then you had a singular crate, maybe two stacked on top of each other, but nothing obscuring in the flanks of the board. Now this was not good at all. I mean, if you did not go first, you were a sitting duck against a shooting army, and pretty much everybody brought a shooting army. Couple that with, I'll show it again later, but 15 out of the 56 players brought AdMech. If AdMech went first, they're gonna win the game. I think the only time AdMech didn't win if they went first was when AdMech was playing AdMech. So technically AdMech did win when they went first, but AdMech also lost. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to complain right now. This is not, in my opinion, ideal terrain for a tournament. Something where you know AdMech are prominent right now and they just wipe the floor with everybody, especially if they go first. You need, instead of two really large pieces of terrain in the middle, you need four smaller or longer line of sight blocking. Allow you to actually hide most of your army turn one if you choose to. That way it really doesn't benefit whoever goes first. A little rant there, but I want to get that out of the way. The next thing I want to talk about, and this is for anybody who is not gone to a tournament or is playing in tournaments, playing people they don't regularly play, maybe a shop pickup game, and that is gotcha moves. I do not like these. I don't think they are very conducive to a friendly gaming event. I mean, yes, this is competitive, but let me explain. So what is a gotcha move? If those of you who don't know, it's when you use a stratagem or some rule you have that your opponent doesn't know about and it has like a big impact on the event. So that's not the bad. The bad part is not allowing your opponent, or if your opponent doesn't allow you, to change your mind once you learn of that stratagem. Now, there might be cases where it's too late. There's no way you can go back and, alter it. But often these gotcha moves are things like, an example here I have is I don't know how to say this, Korgog's Jest, a Harlequin stratagem, or things like Aspect Scan where, if I deep strike and then I can, I can shoot you off the board if you're within 12 inches of a core unit or whatever. Well, if your opponent deep strikes something and then you don't tell them about it and you're like, okay, now I'll shoot you. They're like, oh wait, I didn't know you could do that. And you say you can't let them move it somewhere else. I think that's a little bit of a dick move, to put it lightly. I think really there are, what, 20 armies or whatever in the game. All of them have 30 stratagems or something, along with army special rules, and no one's going to know everything. And you don't want to, I don't know, I think it would feel bad to win off of a little bit of cheese like that, where it's not like you outplayed your opponent, it's just they didn't know every single in and out of your army. So, again, this is ranting. I mean no hard feelings to my opponent, but I'll just put a little bit out there. Using gotcha moves are not great. And I'll touch back on this a little bit more. Other than that, you know, that is what it is. Okay, now tournament results. I just wanted to, again, rant those out of the way. I went with 2 wins and 3 losses. Not ideal, but I ranked 30th overall out of 56 people. However, I played all of those games except for, you know, one of them wasn't great, very well, and got 13th overall in average points. And I know it doesn't do you any good when it comes to necessarily scoring the tournament and placing, but I like to look at overall points because that's, you know, how well you played in each of your matchups. Sure, you could have, you know, 3 wins and 2 losses, but if your 2 losses, you lose by 60 points or something, well, that doesn't look too good. And on average, I did do 74 points, which I'll take it. Sad thing about the weekend, I only went first on my last game, and it was the only time that I really didn't want first turn. I wanted my opponent to push out first because I actually had cover. I had cover in that one, so it was nice to not go first, but I did, so I took advantage of it. And then, like I said, 15 out of the 56 players had some sort of AdMech in their army, whether it was pure AdMech with, you know, 80 Scutari, or it was Space Marines. We had AdMech and Custodes. We had, I think that's probably it. AdMech. Yeah. AdMech, AdMech, AdMech. Lots of them. Let's go over my games. Game 1 was against White Scars. And that was a solid win of 93-47. The MVP of that game was the Scythe Hero Duel. He did work, man. He took on Vanguard Vets, Assault Intercessors, Leviathan Dreadnought, the Khan on bike, a Chaplain on bike, and I think that's about it. Yeah, he took on all of those. I will say almost, no, oh, and Hellblasters. He had a little bit of help with the Hellblasters from the Swarmlord, but otherwise it was all the Scythe Hero Duel, just doing absolute work. Maybe a little bit of smites here and there, which helped him out too, but you know, whatever. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Game 2 was against one of my buddies. Unfortunately, did not go that way. He got first turn, and I did not have a lot of cover, like I said, and his meltas, his multi-meltas and everything were on point. I think he shot 6, we should do six multi-meltas turn 1, and he did 18 wounds with those 6 multi-meltas. Salamanders are just insane. They're all on Landspeeder Tornadoes, I think is what it is. So they all have a multi-melta on them, and that's it. So, because it's 3 individual units, they can all re-roll a failed wound roll, and yeah, so he was on point with those, and that was the only game where I felt like I was in a hole. I mean, I lost an Exocrine turn 1 because I couldn't hide him, and my Hero Duel went down to 6 wounds after turn 1 before I got to even do anything. So he tabled me turn 4, which, you know, kind of sucked, but it's what it is. That was the one bad game. Game 3 was against AdMech, so I was like, oh boy, clenching here, this is gonna hurt. I was really in a position where I thought if I went first, I could have had him. However, I did not, and I lost 400 points in my first turn. But even after losing 400 points in my first turn, which was my Hive Guard, because I couldn't hide them, They, could teleport and shoot and do all this stuff, get line of sight, move. There's no way I could have hid my Hive Guard. Turn 1, gone. I lost most of my warriors turn 1, and I lost a Zone Thrope and Gaunts turn 1. So that was bad. However, I managed to claw my way back with the use of my Hero Duel, Swarm Lord, and my Exocrines. They did crazy work, and I only lost that game 74 to 82. It was, it was close. That's 8 points. There was one turn. Had I survived on an objective, and had I done the last wound to one of their vehicles, that would have been the 8-point swing right there, based on the secondaries and primary stuff. That was it. So it came down to the wire, actually, of winning that one. And I was, it wasn't great, but I was kind of proud of how much I was able to claw my way back into that one. Still, sad loss. Game 4 versus Harlequins. I'm not a fan of Harlequins. I mean, they're really cool. They're fast. They're powerful. They have so much Melta. And this was another case of I went second, and majority of my army was tied up turn 1. Yeah, the score was 69 to 75, and man, I thought I was going to get blown out of the water after the turn 1, but again, clawed my way back in. The Exocrines in this game were insane. I mean, they did so much shooting. Those bikes, having 3 wounds apiece, I can pay some command points to make my Exocrines 3 damage, and they're doing shot after shot after shot, just wiping them out, clawing my way back. I actually had probably something like 6, 7, 8 kills with my Exocrines in close combat. Not with shooting in close combat, which I did, but with actual close combat, powerful limb attacks. These guys were, if I didn't have them perform the way they did, this game would have been like 40 to 75 or something. But it was good. So I'm going to talk about the little salty ending. I'm going to say this is where the gotcha moves came up. Again, nothing to my opponent. I know he was playing to win. It's just there was a gotcha moment at the end with that stratagem. I pointed out the Harlequins that had I been... So I fell back with a Neurothrope to go for my engage points. And he used that stratagem with 3 Melta Pistols and nuked my Neurothrope. I failed 2 of my 3 saves, and he rolled high enough damage to kill it. Had I not done that, had I known he could do that, I would not have fallen back, and I would not have lost my Neurothrope. I wouldn't have gotten engage points, but I could have gotten points otherwise. He gained points for killing my Neurothrope through Assassinate, and the 3 Assassinate points plus the other points I could have achieved in the next turn because of my Neurothrope being alive pretty much sealed the game right there, because that happened right at the end of turn 4. Yeah, I went second. So turn 4 that happened, and that pretty much sealed it. I couldn't do anything else without that Neurothrope being dead, or with that Neurothrope being dead. So it was pretty... I mean, I don't want to cast a horrible shout out, but the game was awesome. The game was the best game I played all weekend against a Harlequin player. It was so back and forth where I thought I was down and out and clawed my way back, really doing the damage to the point where he only had 4 models left at the end of the game, and I had 5 models left at the end of the game. So it was very close. Very good. It's just unfortunate that that little gotcha move puts a sour taste on such a great game. Game 5, though, was against Black Templars, and that was quite a beatdown. It was not close. I'll say that. I lost 10 Hormagaunts, 2 Zone Thropes, and Swarmy. That was it. Everything else just slaughtered his way through Black Templars. This list I have found is very good against non-Salamander Space Marines. Salamanders just do too much to counter the Tyranids, whether it's hordes or big monsters. Salamanders do too much to counter Space Marines. With the +1 to wound on Meltas and Flamers, when you're T8 bugs, rely on being T8 to ignore or to make it hard to wound with Meltas, but they just wound right back on 3s. I feel like had the terrain been a little bit better, had I gone first, I would have been okay. So I'm not sad about my performance. I think it was more of I mean, yes, I could have done some things better. Some dice could have gone my way, that's for sure, but I'm okay with the results in the big picture. So I just want to review the list now, and I'll go through how I thought each unit did. I'll go quickly, this could take a while, but I just want to briefly touch on this. That way, if you guys are looking at the list, see how the results do, you can kind of get my feedback and, you know, maybe you want to change some things up. Let's look at the list. So, Swarmlord gets an A. Not an A+, because, I mean, maybe it should be an A+. I'll give him an A+. He was great for, I casted Warp Ritual a lot as one of my secondaries. I did that in 3 of the 5 games, and it actually paid off on all of them, except for the one, well, 2 of the 3 that I used it paid off. The one, I still did get 7 points for this one. But Swarmy, being able to cast that is easy. And him using Hive Commander, very great. Neurothropes, awesome. The psychic support that 2 Neurothropes bring, especially when one has a Resonance Barb, is crazy. I mean, we got Smites going off, we're guaranteeing some Biostorm basically, and Catalyst to go off. Boosting the Zoanthropes to be even better. Yeah, I loved having the ability to cast 8 psychic powers a turn. That was really fun. HQ's awesome. Hormigons, I gave them a B. However, when I think about it, they really did what I wanted them to do, and that was raise banners or retrieve Octarius data in my backline, screen out my opponent, and maybe take a forward objective if they needed to. So I give them a B only because when I did try to use them for combat, they hit like a wet paper bag. Same thing the Warriors. They did do their job as well. They absorbed the opponent's initial assault. They're pretty much that trading unit where they're just a tank, a block, a blob of 29 wounds. They tank, that's it. They tank and they get on objectives and they tank. They did not do a whole lot of damage at all in combat, but they just tanked. And that's really what they're there for, just a trading unit in the midfield. Lictors, A+. Except for one of them, I'm going to give him A- because I used my stratagem, the stratagem we have, to spend 1 command point to gain D3 command points when you kill a character, kill the 1, or roll the 1. Had I rolled a 2, I would have had 1 command point to use on another stratagem, which would have sealed the game for me. Rippers, A+. I know I toyed around with using 1 unit or 2 units. I think 1 unit was perfect. There was never a time at all in the weekend where I thought, man, I wish I had 1 more unit of Rippers. That 1 unit of Rippers did exactly what they needed. They deep struck, they snuck onto an objective in the backfield if my opponent left it open. They sat there, they took it. One case, the Rippers, I used it to Metabolic Overdrive, and they just hightailed it to the center of the battlefield, stole that mid objective, which was worth a ton of points. So yes, Rippers, A+ for them. 1 squad, I think, is all you need if you have 3 Lictors. Hive Guard, I'll give them an A. They got stuck in combat more than I would have liked to, though that wasn't on my fault of deploying them a little too aggressive. Zoanthropes, A for them as well. They were probably the MVP of most of my games. They could just tank so much firepower with that 3-up invuln save. Again, I'll go back to Harlequin game. They probably got shot with by 20 of those Melta pistols, and I still had one left at the end of the game, along with all the other shooting they did. I mean, they did a ton. They only super smited once all game, or all weekend, which was a little disappointing. I would have liked to get an extra one off, but you know, what can you do? They still did their mortal wounds. The ones I'll say a downside to them, why they're not an A+, or why they didn't perform A+, is because a lot of their smites were often one wound, and one wound is just not enough when you're playing Space Marines all weekend. So that's the only little downside, but they tanked, they took some objectives, and they're awesome. And they could do Psychic Ritual if I needed them to, though I normally did it on somebody else because they had just the sheer psychic offensive powers. Yeah. Exocrines, A+ again. The only time that it didn't feel like the Exocrines pulled their weight is the game where one of them died before I could even use it. These things did so much damage. I wish I kept track of the total points that these Exocrines killed over the course of 5 games. It is probably up there in the 2,000 to 3,000 point range. Keeping them in the backfield, keeping them screened, and allowing them to just sit there and shoot all game long. I'll stand by it. Exocrine with Symbiostorm in a Chronos detachment has to be, point for point, one of the best shooting units in all of Warhammer 40k. And finally, the Hero Duel. I'll give them an A. Not an A+, because Hero Duels do somewhat horrible against Harlequins, just because everything has a 4-up influence save, so they're 6 attacks. If your opponent's rolling hot, can just bounce off, and you really want volley of fire. His Flamer did do well. So the only thing I consider changing is changing out the Warriors for Termagants, though I don't think that's necessarily the best, because with the Adaptive Physiology on the Warriors, they can tank a lot more than the Termagants. Yeah, they could. Your opponent is going to start using like higher quality damage shots on the Warriors to kill them, and any high damage like Meltas, or I mean heavy bolters, but we don't really care about heavy bolters because we just pay 1 command point to reduce them down to 1 damage, and then we ignore the AP. So I like the Warriors. They are a weird unit because they're just a trading unit, so you go in knowing they're not going to do too much besides sit on objectives and just absorb combat and shooting for a couple turns, but that's just kind of the way they are. All in all, I'm happy with this list, and I would run it again. I'm not sure I would change too much. It's more so I think it came down to, did I go first? Did I go second? In case I went second, were the boards giving me cover? If not, well, you know, that's what happens in a very shooty day of Warhammer 40k with AdMech. You gotta shoot them, or you gotta be able to hide from the shooting, and you can't. At least on the boards we played. So that's it. That's the list review. I don't know if you guys have tried this list. I encourage you to do it. I had a lot of fun with it, and I think it is really good. It's got place. I would debate going to another tournament and bringing the same list. Even though I got 30th, I think had I gone first on just the game against the AdMech even, that I could have taken this a lot higher up the rankings. I will cut the rambling there. We will see you guys next time, probably on a battle report. Thanks for watching.